The NFT and crypto markets are pumping once again. Blue chip projects are skyrocketing, coming out with major news. So is this the end of the bear market, or is this really just a trap? All right, so the first thing we got to talk about, obviously, is going to be what's going on coin market cap to get the overall sentiment of what's going on, right? So we see when we look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, and for me, I like to look at Ethereum mostly because most of the NFTs I have are on Ethereum, and you can see it's pumping to 1.2K, right? If we're looking in the past month or so, there was a point where Ethereum was at $800, $900, now it pumped all the way to 1.2. A lot of people were speculating that Ethereum could go all the way down to, let's say, like 600, 700, which is possible because of so much downward macro pressures forcing the markets down in the S&P 500 and housing market and everything else. But right now there is some kind of relief pump, and you have to remember, just because it's pumping right now, it doesn't mean that it's going to keep going up. Sometimes there's that relief pump and then it just like falls straight down, right? And so you have to be very mindful of when you enter and exit different projects or when you buy Ethereum, because if you're buying at 1.2 and it goes down to 600, are you willing to wait long term for it to go higher than the price that you bought it, right? So it all depends on your exit and entry strategy. But in my personal opinion, there are more factors that would lead me to believe that Ethereum would be pushed downward from here, not necessarily up. But hey, you never know, because it is a coin flip after all. But again, you have to look at the market sentiment and what people are feeling. And if you kind of pay attention to, let's say, the housing market, S&P 500, those are kind of going down. I mean, the US economy is looking like it might be in a recession. So just remember to keep that in mind. And also remember that a lot of people during a bull market, they were saying that Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be inflation hedges. In fact, that turned out not to be true, where, when the general markets overall go down, crypto also goes down as well. So it's not like everybody's buying Bitcoin because there's inflation. Everything's kind of going down together. Turning over to Nansen over here, if we're looking at the Nansen Blue Chip 10, it is pumping, right? So all the top projects that we've seen, like Yuga Labs, Doodles, Azuki, those kind of projects, they have been getting more volume. They have been pumping up, especially after NFT NYC, which did kind of revive the market in a sense. Not sure if it's just coincidental timing or what. Can't really say what the factors are, but it did pump quite a bit. And if we're looking at, let's say, the NFT 500, top 500 projects, yeah, there is definitely a pump there. But just remember, it doesn't mean it's going to keep going up forever, because there are more macro pressures pushing things down than upward. Now we're going to the top NFT projects. Major projects that are getting the most volume are going to be like Yuga Lab projects like Other Side, Bored Ape Yacht Club, the Moonrunners, which is a newer project that just came out that everyone's like kind of aping to, but we're not going to cover that in this video. And so with that said, let's go ahead and dive into some major updates on some of the top projects, right? Diving into NFT NYC, because there's a lot that we didn't cover in yesterday's video. ApeFest was one of the premier events that happened for, Bored Ape Yacht Club holders. It's pretty much like a festival, right? So you think of it like a music festival. That's kind of what it looks like from the outside looking in. They had artists like Questlove, Lil Baby, Lil Wayne, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Future, The Roots. So a lot of names that people know. And so this is kind of what it looks like, kind of by the pier. And again, it's like literally a festival where there's like where you can get food on the side. People watch the concert. I guess you hang out and talk with your friends, and that's pretty much it. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of like a smaller version of Coachella in a sense, or if you ever been to those kind of festivals, that's kind of what it feels like in a sense. I don't have a Bored Ape, and I didn't go to this event, but from the most part, what people tell me that they actually did enjoy it, and it was one of the premier events that they've been to, and they became much more bullish on the Bored Ape ecosystem because of this. Now, I wasn't there, so I can't necessarily say my personal opinion, but looks good from the outside looking in. It's kind of cool that, if you have a Bored Ape, you can go to these events for free for life, as long as the company is still in business. I mean, a Bored Ape right now is like 91,000. So is it necessarily worth it to buy a Bored Ape to go to the festivals? Not necessarily, because a festival, something like this might cost like a couple $100 if you just bought a ticket, if there was like an alternative venue doing something similar. But, buying into Bored Ape is really buying into a club and a community. So there's different intrinsic values there. It's not like you buy the Bored Ape just to go to the festivals, right? That's just like a little bonus that they have on top of everything. And on other news regarding Bored Ape, there's been a lot of talk online about Bored Apes being Nazis, this and that. And I actually did spend a little time yesterday looking into it to see like what was going on. And obviously there's this guy like Ryder Rip. He's like kind of doing like exposes Yuga Labs for being like maybe culturally insensitive to certain things. He also created an NFT project where he just copied the Bored Apes and like put on OpenSea, which is like a direct copyright, and said it was art. I believe he's getting sued by Yuga Labs because of that, right? So there's like this whole drama about it. But long story short, when I kind of looked into this myself, and I kind of looked at what Ryder was saying, kind of looked at what Yuga Labs and the founders are saying, I think there is a middle ground of like what's true and not true. From a creative standpoint, Yuga Labs and whoever did the art and the creative direction for the project, they definitely knew what they were doing when they took certain symbolisms and they implemented into their collection. Like for example, the Bored Apes that have like the little Japanese headband, right, which is meant for like chefs. That one says like kamikaze on it, right? So of all the words that they could have chose, they chose kamikaze, which is a little bit culturally insensitive in my personal opinion. It's not like everything is just a coincidence and they just happen to use that one because it looked cool, right? It's obviously a choice that they made, and there are a lot of other choices that they made in the collection that I'm not going to go too deep into. It's hard to say whether or not that was like a purposely throw, malice intent. I don't think it was malice intent. You know, there's a whole bunch of like conspiracy theories that people have about this. So my personal take, there is a middle ground. Yuga Labs is kind of dodging all the bullets in a sense. They're not really addressing all the main points, and they're just saying everything is a coincidence, which I personally don't believe, but I don't believe that they're like outright like trying to do something evil. So definitely a middle ground there. So the next project that we're going to talk about is going to be Artifact Studios Clone X. And one of the major news that they have recently is that they're going to be releasing 3D files of the Clone X. I'm not sure if it's anybody can download it or if you have to own the clone to download your specific file, but you're gonna have the 3D files that you're able to use and manipulate in certain tools and certain software so that you can use it for your art. So if somebody wants to use it to create 3D art, then you can use your Clone X, or maybe you can use it in 3D rigging and use in some kind of metaverse or game, right? That's pretty big news because so far there haven't been any projects that allowed you to download these files and like really use them in that way and have it like an actual fully 3D rigged model. I guess you could argue that CyberCon VX also allow you to do that, which is true, right? But we haven't seen like a Genesis collection like Clone X create their own model, which is going to be very interesting. And again, it's not like a voxel, it's actually going to be a 3D model. Now, the question I have here is that, you know, where exactly are you going to be able to use these 3D models? Because if you use these 3D models in certain metaverses, not every metaverse has the ability to handle a high resolution 3D file. So it might be in the beginning, my guess is people are going to use it for 3D art, using it on like Unity, Blender, Maya, you know, Unreal Engine, right? So I'm guessing you're going to be able to use it there, but not necessarily using it in metaverse that are like ready to go. If you kind of look at Clone X from a marketing positioning, they're really pushing towards attracting creators into their ecosystem. So I can see, let's say, musicians, producers, rappers buying a Clone X and using it as their avatar on Twitter or something. People who are like 3D artists, for example, I think they really gravitate towards Clone X and their mission. And if you think about it, not many projects, actually there's no other project that competes directly with Clone X when it comes to attracting that creator economy, when it comes to like making cool stuff. So they're definitely in a very good position. Personally, for myself, when the price is right, I'm trying to get into Clone X myself, but I gotta wait until Ethereum goes down a little bit. That's just my personal entry. But yeah, Clone X is definitely something that I am personally bullish on, but not saying that you should buy it. I just think that what they push towards and the community that they're building, personally, I think is pretty cool. And another thing, you know, NFT NYC awarded Artifact Studios with Best Fashion Project. Well, obviously they're gonna win because there's literally like no competition competing against Artifact Studios. You know, if you have a 3D model and if you're able to swap out the different clothes, maybe people can design clothes for the metaverse and put them on their Clone X first, and then that will be maybe a stepping stone for them to create more 3D assets for the metaverse and those kind of worlds in the future, right? So if Artifact Studios can be that stepping stone or gateway for people to enter, that would be actually a pretty interesting use case and value proposition for their project. Now, switching things up a little bit, we're gonna move away from the blue chips and we're gonna be talking about, you know, some of the hype projects that came out within the last few weeks and where are they at now? Because, you know, a lot of times when I make videos and I say like, oh, you know, this project's really hype, but I think that it's not gonna last for a long time, I get a lot of comments on Twitter saying, Patrick, you don't know what you're talking about, this and that. What I wanna do is revisit some of these projects so that we can really see what's going on. So one of the popular projects that came out recently, which was literally like within the last month, was We Are All Gonna Die, right? And what they were doing was really interesting, where they burned a mutant ape. They had a lot of burning mechanics, a lot of hype to it. Right now, you know, the volume for this project has been like going down quite significantly. Floor price has been going down quite significantly again. So, you know, back in the day when I did a video on this in the beginning, I kind of mentioned that sometimes for these meme kind of NFTs that just pop out of nowhere, you can't expect everything to become a full brand. Sometimes they're just looking for the royalties, for example, and make money from the royalties. And I'm not saying that this is a rug or anything. It's like it's an experiment, our project, and people want to gamble, they want to play the game. That's totally fine. You know, that's cool. It's hard to sustain that momentum because after you do a couple things like burning an ape, you have the news, kind of like what next? You know, because you already made so much money on the royalties. So it's like, what are you gonna do next? And it doesn't mean that it's gonna die. It could pop back up. But for everybody that, you know, degened and gambled and they bought at the top, it's kind of difficult. You're still holding, right? And those are always the dangers when you're going into these type of projects and you don't know your entry and exit strategies. If you're looking on their Twitter, so it's not like they're really posting anything. They're just like retweeting stuff. If they're not posting any new content, anything interesting, then it's hard for a project to continue to survive. Maybe they're relying on the community to create user-generated content, which is, in my personal opinion, like is a little bit lazy in a sense, if you kind of think about it. Could be something interesting, but like anything that pops up too fast, expect it to drop really fast as well, because it's like a lot of times people aren't buying because they really support the project, but because they want to make a lot of money, right? And that's no fault on the project. It's just the culture of NFT crypto and gambling and things like that, right? Okay, so now let's look at the tDeployer, right? A lot of people were commenting on Twitter Twitter like, Patrick, there's more to this. You should check it out, do another video on it. And here we are doing another video, right? Initially I did get it wrong where when I first made this video, it was like, oh, these guys are just making project after project, which is true actually. They are just making project after project, but their whole system of how they were doing is a little more complex, where there's like tokens involved. You buy certain NFTs to get another NFT. So it's not just like project after project. There's like certain mechanisms to encourage people to keep buying more NFTs, which is actually smarter for them because they get more royalties, right? Overall, I would say like when you're looking at these, it's hard to say like if these are actually valuable, because the only point of buying one NFT is to buy another NFT and just kind of keep going, and that would be considered in some eyes a Ponzi, right? I'm not saying that this is a Ponzi. I'm just saying that there are certain mechanics that are very similar to a Ponzi. And then when you go to activity, like I'll poop it, the volume definitely has dried up quite a bit, right? And I'm not throwing shade on the project. It's just not as hot as it was before, because a lot of times when people go into this project, they're buying these things, it's going up, more people want to buy in, but the only reason why people buy is because they believe that they can make money. And again, that's essentially the same mentality of gambling, right? When you're playing these gambling games, the games do not last forever. And I've seen many projects, not just like, the poop project, but like there's many projects in the past that had used certain similar mechanisms. So it's not nothing revolutionary. I would give these guys credit because they made the art really quick. They just hit the sentiment really hard. And it's like they packaged everything really well and got people involved, right? So really good at capturing attention. But at the end of the day, in the casino, the house always wins. So I think the question here is like, from here, all the value of their assets are pretty much going down. And then from there, it's like they're creating all these other projects. Like, you gotta be realistic with yourself, right? Pixel versus Poops. Like, do you think this will go far? Or like Lil Poop It, right? After you use these things to get the next NFT, like the coin that they put out, will that be valuable? You tell me. So it's like, I think if you buy into this project, you either have to understand that it's a gambling game where people are just trying to one up each other and make money on top of each other, or do you actually believe in this project and that you believe them to create, let's say, like 5 NFT sets in 1 month is actually sustainable? We haven't necessarily seen it be sustainable for any project, right? And so you just have to be realistic about what's going on and know that when you buy these projects, know what kind of game you're playing. Are you playing a gambling game, or are you betting on a long-term future? And a lot of times, especially if you're a beginner, you think you're investing in a long-term future, whereas majority of the players are actually playing the gambling game, and they know that you don't know it's a gambling game and they take your money. That's usually how it goes. So be very careful about that. All right, so the next project that we are going to be talking about is going to be Doodles. Now, the biggest news that Doodle came out with during the NFT NYC was, number one, they brought on Pharrel Williams, obviously the superstar musician, as a board member and also the chief brand officer. And Pharrel has a history of being like the creative director, chief brand officer for many different projects in the past, different like Web2 clothing brands and things like that. And so he's bringing those expertise, that brand awareness into Doodles, right? Which is a Web3 brand. So that's going to be huge. And a lot of people bought into Doodles just because of that news. The second thing is that Doodles is coming out with Doodles 2. What that's going to be is going to be like a generation 2 of Doodles. And so the first generation is going to be like a fixed set of like 10,000. And then the second generation is going to be like millions, I believe, of different Doodles that you can, use, customize, and they're going to be different from the first ones. So the key difference between Doodles and Doodles 2 is that for Doodles 1, it's going to be just like the picture profile shot. Doodles 2 is actually going to be a full body. It's going to be animated. There's going to be some original music attached to it, and you're going to be able to swap out the different clothes. Now, this is really interesting because Doodles is going for an IP play, right? I don't believe they're trying to do like tokens and like a game and things. I think they are trying to do a game actually, but they're going for more the IP, that Pokemon play, where you have this really strong IP and then you can do many different things from that IP, right? And so by bringing on Pharrel, they have this whole music side they want to do. If you look at the animation teaser they put out, they can probably do a cartoon, animations. What I feel like the strategy here is by creating more NFTs like Doodles 2, where a million people can own it. Essentially, if you're a fan of the music, you're a fan of the cartoon, you're a fan of like whatever they put out, then, buying a Doodles 2 would be the equivalent to buying merchandise, for example, where you're not necessarily buying it because you think it's going to go up in value. You're buying it because you want to buy it and you want to support it and you want to rep it. And that's probably much better. And then when there's more demand and there's more attention for people buying these things that they don't expect the value of it to go up, the original genesis of 10,000 will probably increase in value just because there's more demand and attention for the entire collection in general, right? And also it's a fixed 10,000. So I think it's a pretty smart play on Doodles' perspective. I think it's pretty smart that they're going to be focusing on music, animation, consumer products, events, IP partnerships. So it's like literally an IP brand, just like Mickey Mouse's, anything Disney, anything Pokemon, any Gundam, for example, like IP is the name of the game. And this is a very strong IP that I think a lot of different people in different ethnicities, different countries can relate to, this rainbow style, colorful kind of vibe. And I think another important thing is you need to understand who are the people supporting this project, right? So we did talk about this in a previous video where Julian, which is CEO of Doodles, recently hired. He was the president of Billboard. He has a lot of experience at Billboard at revenue partnerships and things like that. It's basically bringing in deals, generating revenue for the company, probably through like IP, using the IP rights for certain things, bringing in certain musicians. So they definitely have the right people in place for the CEO. They also have Alexis, who who was one of the co-founders of Reddit, and he also has a VC called 776 who invested probably quite a bit of money into the project. And if you didn't know, 776 invested, I think, 8 million into Moonbird. They announced that right after they launched. They also invested into Bored Ape Yacht Club, and they also invested in Solana project and the Solana ecosystem, and now they're investing into Doodles, right? And so like we learned from the past, typically the ventures or the projects that have a lot of VC money behind them typically can increase in value quite a bit, whether it's the floor price increasing, getting attention, getting certain executives or key members into the project. That typically works out pretty well. We've seen historically, right? And if we look at all the projects that have like VC funding or from top tier VCs, we have like CloneX, Azuki. I think they are VC backed. I don't know if that's public or not, but a lot of people speculate that they're VC backed, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were. Doodles, obviously VC backed. Bored Ape Yacht Club, VC backed. There is a game to this that people are playing, and you have to understand who the VCs are that have the potential to pump projects. Somehow all these VCs are connected to each other, and so you bet that if a strategy works, they will probably replicate it into different niches, different projects. Always pay attention to where the VC money is going, because where the VC money goes, typically what they're really good at doing is convincing the retail to follow them, right? If you're watching this, most likely you're retail, pay attention to that. And so that's it. That's everything we got to cover for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, follow me on Twitter at Patrick Dang. And if you want to stay connected with the community, make sure to join the Parallax Discord. But there are certain parts where you have to have the Parallax Genesis NFT to get certain access to special whitelist, special alpha, but it is free for the regular person if you want to just get involved in the community and see what is going on. With that said, my name is Patrick Dang, and I will see you guys in the next one.